The man has only 6 bullets against a crowd of zombies. Hello all. This is Jacobson and this is a brief retelling of the 11th and 12th episodes of the 7th season of the zombie series The Walking Dead. You can see the previous episodes at the links in the video description. As soon as this video gets 300 likes, I will release the next part. Enjoy watching it.
In the shelter group, a group of rescuers discovers the body of Fat Joey in the motorcycle parking lot where Daryl killed him. Dwight makes his way to the crowd and immediately notices the missing motorcycle. In a panic, he runs through the corridors of the shelter until he gets into Daryl's empty cell. Dwight takes a walkie-talkie from his apartment and notices Daryl's prison clothes on the floor. He finds a note that Daryl received from his liberator and studies it. Negan returns to the camp with a new inmate, Eugene, who shakes with horror when Laura, the female savior, leads him deeper into the shelter. She stops their procession at the doorway while Eugene begs her for mercy. When she opens the door, Eugene is surprised to see that she has brought him to a separate apartment intended for him. While he is looking around his new apartment, Laura finds out that Daryl has escaped. She asks Eugene if he has any clues about his whereabouts. Eugene replies that he doesn't and sincerely assures her that he will tell her if he finds out. Eugene continues to inspect his new possessions. He is glad that the refrigerator is filled with food and learns that Laura can bring him food of his choice. Dwight is sitting in his room, studying the handwriting on a piece of paper. The rescuers burst into the room and begin to beat him brutally, while Negan watches them from the doorway. Dwight sits in Daryl's dark cell, terrified. Negan informs him that Sherry has escaped and asks if she helped Daryl escape. Dwight defends Sherry. Negan continues to speculate and asks if Dwight has changed his lane and if he himself has helped Daryl. He then orders Dwight to find Sherry and bring her back. In the infirmary, Dr. Carson stitches up Dwight's wounds and notices that Sherry was soft and probably helped Daryl escape. In the flashback, Dwight looks at a photo of himself and Sherry in happier times. Back in the present, Dwight picks up his backpack from the apartment. He takes out a box of cigarettes from a hiding place. Inside the box is a cigarette stained with lipstick whiter. Dwight leaves the complex on a motorcycle. Laura shows Eugene the factory floor and explains the Savior's points system from which he is exempt. He can take whatever he wants. She takes a jar of pickles and gives it to Eugene. Outside, at the shelter fence, Negan orders Simon to go with a search party to Alexandria in search of Daryl. Eugene is brought to him and frighteningly introduced. When asked what his name is, Eugene answers Eugene. Then Negan asks the Saviors to tell him their names, and they answer in unison, Negan. Negan scares Eugene by showing him the damage done to Lucille by his homemade bullet. Negan asks Eugene about his credentials, if he is a smartass. Frightened, Eugene again resorts to the old lie that he told Abraham, and declares that he has several doctorates and participated in the Human Genome Project. Negan asks Eugene for advice on how to prevent the deterioration of his walkers on the fence line. Eugene amazes Negan with his proposal to cover them with a shell of liquefied metal, which will make the walkers indestructible after cooling. As a reward for his ingenuity, Negan offers to send several of his wives to Eugene's apartment. He also gives him the nickname Dr. Smartass. Eugene is playing video games while Negan's 3 wives are watching him. Tanya and Frankie are sitting next to him, and Amber is sitting apart from the group and drinking. During the conversation, Tanya jokingly asks if Eugene knows how to make a bomb. Eugene lists the ingredients he will need to make a bomb. Eugene goes outside with Amber, Tanya and Frankie. He mixes the ingredients and sets fire to a balloon filled with hydrogen. Wives cheerfully clap. Dwight rides a motorcycle through a dead suburb. He parks in front of an abandoned house and goes inside. He's looking for Sherry at their old house, where they agreed to meet if they ever break up. He looks at a picture of himself and Sherry in happier times. He finds a farewell note from Sherry, as well as her wedding ring. She confesses that she freed Daryl, and apologizes for forcing Dwight into the world of Negan. Dwight is shaking with emotion. He puts the rings in a cigarette box. He puts pretzels and beer next to the candle, the thing mentioned in Sherry's letter. Tanya and Frankie come to Eugene for help. They explain that Amber wants to commit suicide, and ask if he can prepare pills for her. Eugene reluctantly agrees. Eugene uses his position to take a cue at the market and orders cold capsules. He also takes an unusual-looking stuffed toy that he seems to like and which he calls a Grimblick. He returns to his apartment and prepares pills. Dr. Carson is treating Dwight's wounds. Dwight tells him that he found Sherry in trouble with walkers and killed her. Laura accompanies Eugene to the factory, where a crowd has gathered around the furnace. Negan enters and directs Lucille straight at Eugene. "You should pay attention to that," he says. Negan turns and hits Lucille on Dr. Carson's shoulder. Negan accuses Dr. Carson of helping Daryl escape in order to impress Shear. He shows Dr. Carson a note from Sherry, which Dwight cut out of her farewell letter and put in Dr. Carson's desk. "Goodbye, sweetheart," says the note. Dr. Carson accuses him of lying before, but he quickly gives up and makes a false confession when Negan threatens him with a red-hot iron. Negan stares at Eugene before grabbing Dr. Carson and throwing him face-first into the oven. Negan hugs Dwight, saying, "It's good that we have a backup Dr. Carson." Frankie and Tanya visit Eugene at his apartment. He correctly guesses that the pills are for Negan, not for Amber, and refuses to give them away. Tanya calls him a coward, and they leave. Negan visits Eugene. He tells Eugene that his invitation wasn't easy and explains that he doesn't need to be afraid anymore. Negan asks Eugene who they are, but before he finishes the question, Eugene seems to attach his former friends, replying, "I'm Negan." Eugene, dressed in a store coat, eats pickles, watching the workers of the shelter fence, who carry out his plan to strengthen the walkers with molten metal. Dwight joins Eugene at the top of the stairs. Dwight asks him if he agrees with the plan. Eugene assures him that he does. After trying to apologize for the bite in the groin, names are exchanged. Eugene ends his performance with the words, "We are Negan." Dwight reluctantly responds to this. "Yes." In the woods, Rick and Michonne are looking for weapons to fulfill their deal with Jedis. While preparing for another day of gathering supplies, Rick notices that one of their walkie-talkies needs batteries. While still collecting supplies, they accidentally find the Saviors playing golf on the course. They discover batteries in the Saviors' truck. Back in the van, Rick charges the dead walkie-talkie with batteries stolen from the Saviors. Michonne suggests they return to Alexandria, but Rick convinces her to continue the search for another day and a half. Meanwhile, in Alexandria, Rosita stands on the porch and removes stitches from a cut on her face. Tara comes with the intention of helping Rosita remove the stitches. After an awkward pause, Tara assures Rosita that they have enough people to fight Negan, they just need to find a weapon. Rosita snaps back, asking where they are going to look for weapons. "I can't just wait," Rosita says and leaves, vowing to find a weapon. As Michonne drives the van down the road, she looks at Rick and sees that he has dozed off. Michonne makes coffee on the side of the road while Rick continues to sleep. She notices a deer in the woods and quietly takes a gun from the van. Rick wakes up and joins Michonne. They're looking for a deer, but it's not there. Then they notice something else in the distance. Rick and Michonne discover an abandoned school with a chain-link fence surrounding its perimeter. They knock on the fence, and the sound attracts a walker in combat uniform with a gun on his shoulder. Having dealt with the walker, Michonne takes his weapon. Rick examines the casings on the ground and guesses that they will soon find a serious weapon. Rosita is looking for a weapon alone. She notices a gun in the doorway of an old house and goes after it. A walker attacks Rosita. She kills a walker and grabs a gun, but discovers that it is a toy. Enraged, she throws the toy gun to the ground. Rick and Michonne climb onto the flooded roof of the school to get a better view of what is happening. They see that the school grounds are decorated with carnival rides and teeming with walkers, all with weapons. Michonne describes this place as a battlefield. Watching what is happening, Rick wonders if they will be able to cope with all the walkers. In response, Michonne shoots a rifle at a game stand in the distance and hits the target, and they both laugh. Suddenly the roof collapses under them, and they fall down. Rick and Michonne land on the bed and burst out laughing at their great luck. As they look around, Rick sees a large pile of boxes, each filled with canned goods and other supplies. Back in Alexandria, Rosita visits Gabriel at church. She yells at him for dissuading her from killing Negan, even though it could have led to her death. Gabriel patiently defends himself. He claims that the rest of the group still needs her. Rick and Michonne open the drawers and find a huge amount of non-perishable products in them. That evening they feast in the school gym. They decide to set aside a third of the food for the saviors, and part of the weapons for scavengers. When they talk about the upcoming war, Michonne encourages Rick to lead the communities after defeating Negan. Rick suggests they spend another day or two before returning home. Later, Rick stays awake at night while Michonne sleeps. Babysitter Judith, Tara verbally discusses with herself the pros and cons of telling Rick about guns in Oceanside. She is torn between her promise to keep his whereabouts a secret. Outside the school, Rick and Michonne develop a plan to close the gap in the perimeter fence and kill all the walkers. Rick switches the abandoned car to neutral and does not roll it to the breach. The brakes are failing. A walker with a machine gun on his shoulders caught on the armature, the trigger of the machine gun caught on the metal, and he shot at Rick and Michonne. Michonne jumps into the trunk as the car drives through the gap and stops. Walkers swarm in the car. Rick and Michonne get out of the car through the hatch, and the walker follows them. Rick and Michonne separate to split up the herd. While fighting with walkers, Rick notices a deer and climbs onto the Ferris wheel to get a good look at it. The dilapidated structure cannot withstand his weight, and he falls. He shoots at the walkers when they start to approach him. Michonne runs to help Rick and sees the walkers feasting on fresh flesh and guts. She drops her katana in shock, thinking that Rick is dead. As the walkers move towards her, Rick breaks out of the carnival attraction and begins destroying the walkers. He throws Michonne on her katana, and she starts acting again. After they have killed the whole herd, they embrace. When Rick and Michonne collect weapons on the school grounds, he sees her crying in the distance. Michonne sits in silence during a trip to Alexandria. Rick stops the car. He warns her that in the fight with Negan they will lose people, possibly each other. He tells her that it will be worth it, because it is no longer about them, but about the future. He asks her to lead the group if he doesn't survive. Rick's group delivers 63 pistols to Jedi's and her people. Rosita is outraged when Jedi says that she needs twice as many weapons. Rick insists on keeping 20 guns to help them find new ones. Jedi's agrees. Back in Alexandria, Rick asks Tara if she has seen Rosita, who did not come to the changing of the guard. Tara says she has something to tell Rick. Rosita visits Sasha at the Hilton, asking for her help in killing Negan. Sasha agrees to help on one condition: she must shoot. Rosita hands Sasha a rifle and tells her that she has memorized the description of the Negan complex given by Daryl and Carl. Sasha says that Jesus drew her a map of the appearance of the camp. They admit that the task will most likely end with their death. Rosita stresses that this is a one-way ticket for both of us.